Saw this headline on Bleacher Report's Twitter page. So this tweet says Carmelo will produce a four-part documentary series on his life and career per at Deadline Nelly. That was a source. What do I think about this? So when I think about Carmelo's career, I would say this. From day one, when I watched him play, he exactly reminded me of Glenn Robinson, just a more athletic Glenn Robinson. For those of you who don't know, Glenn Robinson was a very good player during the 90s and in early 2000s. I think he played 10 years in the career, 10 years in the league. That was how long his career was. About 11 years. Okay, I see that. But if you look at his numbers and you compare him to Carmelo career-wise, they're nearly identical in points per game, rebounds, assists. They're very, very closely similar. Just it's basically identical if you look at their numbers. But Carmelo was just a more athletic version of Glenn Robinson in my eyes. And I would say this, Carmelo really did have a good stretch, I would say, where he was actually an efficient scorer from 2005 up until 2008. He was shooting way above 45%, which I think is pretty good for a perimeter player. If they shoot above 45, that to me is pretty efficient in my eyes. And so he had that great 3-year stretch, I felt, but after 2008, he started becoming an inefficient chucker, just an ISO player. Granted, he was always one, but he stopped being efficient. So I always felt that was a detriment to his team when he was inefficient, which he was for most of his career, being a chucker. And I also thought he was dumb for forcing his way out of Denver. Those Nugget teams were very good. They had a lot of talent. And I felt they were always on the verge of being a championship team. They had the talent that I felt that if you switched LeBron in his place, they probably would have won a ring or two. So I just felt that was due to Carmelo just not being great enough to elevate guys. Because I always feel the great players elevate the teammates around them. They take them to another level, and I felt Carmelo never could do that. That to me was the biggest knock on him. He just never elevated the guys around him. So I always felt that was a knock on his game. Other thing about Carmelo, I would say I did not respect. I always thought he was a cheap shot and he had punkish behavior. I can still remember one play way back in the 2005 playoffs against the Spurs. I remember watching this series, and I think Ginobili was cooking them pretty badly in game 4 of that series. And so the Nuggets had won game 1, they lost game 2, they lost game 3, and they were on the verge of losing game 4 on their home court, which they would lose. Towards the end of the game, Ginobili drives to the hole, goes up in the air. Carmelo jumps up, elbows him hard in the face, giving him a dirty cheap shot. Ginobili falls to the ground, and it was intentional. They were able to tell it was intentional. Carmelo gets tossed out of the game. And I felt that Carmelo had a lot of those dumb moments throughout his career where he would throw cheap shots, just act a fool or act dumb. And especially now, I thought last year he was acting like a dumb fool, getting into confrontations with guys, starting stuff with guys, just shoving them, getting up in their faces. To me, that really shows like a lack of character. When you're younger, when you're in your 20s, you can chalk up that behavior to being young and dumb, but not when you're in your late 30s like Carmelo was last year. That's just a sign of just having terrible character, just immaturity. So those are things I just don't respect about him. But he did have a stretch, I would say, during that 3-year period during the mid 2000s where people thought he was going to be a legit superstar, but it just never came to fruition. And he went to New York, and just bad career move, I felt. Just he didn't really do much there. He did get them out of the first round once, so I'll give him credit, since the Knicks haven't gotten out of the first round since then. So he has that on his resume, but just overall, just I would say just a good career, not a great career, and not a career that really is memorable. I definitely won't be watching this documentary. To me, there's just nothing to get out of it. But hey, maybe there's some hardcore Knicks fans who love Carmelo, and maybe some Denver Nugget fans that still love him despite him leaving. I think the Nugget fans are probably over it now that with him when he ditched their team, since Jokic has has surpassed Carmelo by probably 100 miles at being the greatest Nugget player of all time. But I'm sure Carmelo's up there, all-time great Nuggets. I think you would put him up there with David Thompson, Dikembe, and you have Jokic, but definitely not the greatest. So that's all I have to say about this.